Hi everyone, welcome. We'll begin by me positioning myself in a spot where I cover the direct sunlight from kind of burning out the scene, because the direct sunlight is really bright and I'm not sure how the camera is going to take to that. Inside this piece of newspaper I've got a little bundle of shredded paper and cardboard, the type of stuff that I make my pre-made bedding out of down in my wormery. I figured since these guys are constantly getting just handfuls of leaves as bedding, I thought maybe a little treat for them, a little bit of paper, instead of just their same routine of always getting leaves as bedding might be a little treat for them. So I figured we'd give them a little bit of paper shreds this time. As you can see, last time we also just kind of covered the top surface here with some leaves. So they've been getting a variety of different types of bedding. Prior to them getting just these top coverings of leaves, you can also see another type of bedding that they were getting recently, which was weeds. I had pulled all kinds of crabgrass out of my garden. Yeah, I had a lot of it. So that ended up becoming stuff that I loaded not only into my compost barrel but into here too, into our outdoor worm bag version 4.0. Every year I do one of these outdoor systems. It started out as just doing like an overwinter test. That sort of became outdoor system number 1, and then over the years it started becoming like a year-long around the calendar sort of always present outdoor system, which sometimes cheats and becomes a not so outdoor system, especially in the really cold days of winter. I'm starting to question whether or not we even need to add any food today, because there's quite a bit of leftovers. I do remember the last feeding being a pretty generous one, and I'm seeing some of the leftovers of that here, such as these pepper bits. Some of them look like they've been nibbled on quite extensively, and other ones look like they're holding up pretty good over time. Some of the stuff down in here is quite cold. We've had a number of really chilly days recently, and I'm also wondering if that's also partially the reason we're finding so many worms huddled down in the middle, not only coming for the food but also attempting to evade the cold that's gradually working its way from the outside. One of the feedings a few feedings ago was some of the cantaloupes, I believe these were, that grew wild in my garden. And usually, I mean, that one time at least when we fed a number of these, they were all broken or cut open. So the fact that that one was never cut or breached in any way and is still holding up without infiltration yet is I guess sort of a little test, just to see how long that thing can last before it finally gives up and lets the worms in. These are some corn cobs. There was another one over here, and it looks like we used a whole bunch of leafy material as the bedding for the most recent feeding too, because I'm seeing an abundance of leafy material down low here. Here's another corn cob. I must say the material down here is quite chilly. It's a fairly warm day today with the sun out and with the temperatures going up into the 50s today during the day. Look at all these worms hanging out down low. There's another corn cob, and there's other bits of food down here too, but these worms have really started huddling together at the very lowest reaches of this system. And whether that's because of all the moisture dripping off the last feeding, collecting down there in the leaves, or if they're trying to evade the chill, I'm not quite sure, but look at them all. There is a lot of lots of worms hanging out down here. So we could continue, you know, disrupting this and checking out the worms, but I think I'm going to start loading in their feeding here today. You know, I'm glad I've got a pretty good amount of shredded paper here to include with today's feeding, because those pumpkin bits are just sitting there in a big pile, and like this little bundle of worms just didn't really manage to find their way down into the bedding. They just sort of huddled on top of one another. So I feel good that I can at least lay down a nice insulating layer beneath the frozen foods that I'm about to dump in, so that if any wormies are nearby, then maybe they'll feel the cold, but they'll be able to squirm away if they don't like being so close to something quite so chilly. Let's keep it all in the bin here. It's like a little confetti party favor here. Let's start getting this feeding in here. I wasn't sure. Okay, there we go. I wasn't sure how tightly this bundle of stuff had frozen to itself, so I wasn't sure how much of it I'd be able to break apart, but luckily it all fell apart pretty nicely. It's been sitting out here in the sun for a little while too, thawing, and that might be part of the reason. So we had some, well, I guess before we put in those leftover bits of food, it might be kind of nice to put another insulating layer of more bedding down, so that as we bring in the occupied bedding and food bits that we stumbled on earlier, if there are any worms hanging out on that stuff, then maybe they don't have to be dumped directly onto some frozen pumpkin. So I think there were some worms hanging out on these corn cobs. Pretty sure there's still worms hanging out on these pieces of pepper and other stuff, as well as this cantaloupe, which I wonder how long it's going to take before the oops, well, I think me jamming my thumb into it, I think, is going to start the progress of this little piece of fruit finally underway, because now they'll be able to actually get in there and take advantage of that yummy melon inside, instead of only being able to cruise around and past it. So let's see, some of this other older bedding material that was down in the hole but is now just sort of surface covering anymore. Some of the crabgrass, here's a whole bunch more of it. It's all over the place. It seems to have done pretty nicely as far as a bedding that sticks around for a little while, although I think the whole idea is that you want them pretty much eating everything in the bin. So I don't know, different schools of thought, I suppose. I see some people use certain types of bedding because they just want to have worms around. They don't want to have to necessarily be replacing the bedding all the time. So maybe they'll use like wood chips or a tougher type of a bedding material, which I guess sticks around for a little longer rather than all getting broken down and eaten so quickly. I guess that all depends on what you're raising your worms for. Well, I just figured I'd use that as a quick opportunity to circle the bin really quick and aerate the outer edges and take a peek at how things out there look. I see lots of dark castings piling up everywhere, and I guess as the temperatures continue to drop, I have a feeling the worms are going to continue gravitating towards the middle to try to outrun the encroaching cold. So maybe at some point soon I'll decide to maybe take this system inside. Sometimes in the winter times I like to bring it in and try to help it remain somewhat active instead of seeing all the worms go pretty much dormant during the winter and not be able to break stuff down for me. I think there's an advantage to keeping them a little bit warm so they can keep busy. All right, everyone, that's it for today's check-in with our outdoor worm bag. Nice hearty feeding of pumpkin, and enjoying this really nice day out here. I wonder how many more of these we're going to have. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.